What's up everybody, you're watching the From WordPress to Statamic YouTube channel. My name is Michael. Today I want to show you how I might approach doing something pretty common that you'll see on a lot of websites, which is a method to give a little bit of a surprise and delight for users coming to your website. And that's just a simple fade in when something comes into the viewport. For those of you front-end developers, you probably know how to do this already. There's this thing called the Intersection Observer API, and it's basically just a way of watching how far away a given element is from the viewport, and gives you a ratio of how close the element is to being visible or not. So 1 would be fully visible, and then it goes down from there outside of the viewport or as it edges away, that kind of thing. You've probably seen that I'm using Alpine in a lot of my code in this channel, and Alpine gives us a plugin that we can use with our code that makes this super easy. So I'm going to combine using the Alpine Intersect plugin with using partials in my Statamic project, so that I can just wrap it around anything that I want to have this fade in effect on. So the first thing that I need to do is just to make sure that I actually have the Alpine plugin available to me. And so if I look at my package.json here, I know that I've already got the Alpine Intersect as part of my dependencies. So if you don't have that, you'll want to npm install this project here. And then once you're in there, you can say import intersect from @alpine/intersect, intersect, and then you'll instantiate the plugin using that object, intersect. And I already have my watcher going in the background, so it's already loaded into my code. So the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to, in my components over here, I'm going to add a new file. I'm going to call it intersect.handlers.html. And this is going to be just used as a partial. Now the way that I can do that is I'm just going to make a div for starters, and then I'm going to have a slot here so that anything that I pass into here will just appear in this slot. So I'm just going to put a class on here called intersect partial, so we can demonstrate this is working. Now I'm going to come over here to my about page. Here we go. Oh, maybe it's not working. Did I just spell it wrong? Intersect Alpine. Let's just make sure that this is working. Run dev. Okay, so I've got a problem here. Intersect. Did I spell everything correctly? Intersect. Let's go back to package.json. Alpine. Oh, Alpine.js. That's my mistake. There we go. I know it's there. Okay, and we're back up and running. So this component here, like I've got a bunch of these, 50-50 splits that maybe when I have a bunch of them together, I'll want to fade them in nicely so they sort of appear one after another. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into that 50-50 split partial here, and maybe I just want to do the heading just to test it out, keep it simple. So I'm just going to close this real quick. Okay, so I've got my heading, my content that appears in this block here. So I'm just going to use the heading for starters. So I'm just going to wrap it in my partial. Say partial, and that's the components.intersect. And this is going to go into the slot there. So partial components.intersect. There we go. And so now when I reload this, if I was to inspect, I should see that intersect partial div wrapping my partial here, and it should be the same for all of them because they're all using the same component. Okay, there we go. So now I can go ahead and flesh out my partial a little bit so that I get some of this Alpine intersect behavior. So I'm going to go back to that file. Okay, now that I'm in here, I'm going to start leveraging some of my Alpine functionality so that I can make this work. Okay, now that I'm in here, I'm going to start layering some of my Alpine code so that we can make use of this Intersect plugin. So what I'm going to do is just give it a little bit more space here, and I'm going to say x data, and we're going to make this property called visible and make it false by default. And then I'm going to add a dynamic class. It's sort of like saying, you know, x bind class, but it's just a shorthand. You can check out the Alpine docs for that. And I'm going to say, so if it's visible, I'm going to say its opacity 100, and maybe remove a translate y back to 0, like that, or else and make sure you have all the quotes properly, or it might not work on you. So I'll say the opacity is going to be 0, and translate y is going to be something subtle like 3. Maybe we'll add some transition all, and I can already see if you look at the browser that my the content inside my partial is now opacity 0, right? Because my property is false, so everything's hidden. So there's my opacity 0. If I was to just uncheck that, there we go. Just add that transition in there, and maybe we'll add some a delay, 300 milliseconds. Maybe we'll see how the duration is 1200. Just keep it slow. Ease out, and maybe some will change. This is for performance for the browser to say, hey, you're gonna like do some transitions. I'll just be ready for it when it happens. So it should be like pretty instant. Okay, we see some fading effects there. Okay, so it's gonna do that out of the box, and maybe I'll add my X cloak just to hide things right from the beginning, just so you don't get that appearance right away. This is one of these things that we see a lot in Alpine projects. There's this X cloak directive, and that goes away later once the thing becomes visible. And we're just using some CSS to make that display none. So next, okay, so this is all hidden. Okay, now I can finally make use of the Intersect plugin. And it's just simple as just saying X intersect. And then I can say, you know, when it's in there, I can say visible equals true. Okay, you see when things appear in the viewport, then they've faded in nicely. There we go. Let's just give it a refresh. We'll scroll down to it, and there we go. Nice. Okay, well, maybe I don't want it just to be on the heading. Maybe I want it to be on the whole component. So I'm going to go back to my 50-50 split, and I'm not going to wrap the heading. I'm actually going to wrap the entire section here. So I'm going to get rid of that. Some formatting here. And so each one is going to have, each sort of block is going to fade in now instead of the entire heading. There we go. Whoops. Let's try that again. Yeah, there's the first one, there's the second one. There we go. Nice. And if I wanted to, you know, change my offset, you know, I want to fade it in maybe after, then I can adjust the margins, you know, the intersect margins. You can read the documentation here on how to do that. You know, when it enters and when it leaves, you can do different things, right? Maybe you only want it to come in once, so you can have this once modifier. If half of it is shown, or if it's the full thing, and then the threshold is, you know, how you evaluate, like it says here, 50, when 50% of the element is in the viewport, then you can trigger your change. So there's lots of things that Caleb, who built this, he did really nicely, so that the API is pretty simple to use. But you know, combining our partials in Statamic with this Intersect tool, it makes things like this super easy. All I have to do is go in and, you know, wrap the component that I want to use. So maybe let's try this one level out again. I'm going to just remove that. And you know, I've got this every one of my page builder blocks could make use of this if I really wanted to. So I'm going to open up my sidebar here. Put this block. This sort of wraps everything in my page builder. So maybe I'll do this. I'll just wrap the whole thing so that every component is going to make use of this. There we go. There's the whole thing. And then that one fades in. If we go back to my home page, maybe this will be a little bit easier to see. There's the hero. There's that thing. All these different components are now using this. So, you know, all I have to do is wrap whatever content I want with my partial. And there we go. And if we really want, we could enhance this by adding, you know, if we want to pass in a class, maybe make this one dynamic just to test it out. So we'll pass in the type. And if I go back to my component here, where is it? There we go. So the class, I can say if the class is there, I'll output it, or else no class, just so we can see the difference. Be sure to wrap that. Whoops. Go out here. There we go. Okay, so let's inspect that. Here's one of my blocks. So my partial is taking that CTA bumper in this case, right? It's dynamic, and this one is going to take my accordion. This one is going to take the image carousel. So if I want to, you know, pass down classes for anything, you know, maybe this is inside of a smaller component and I need to have some width, or, you know, if it has some flex properties, I can pass it in using this mechanism. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you haven't already, please sign up for my email newsletter. The link is in the description. Catch you next time.